photo of there's like 5 of us in a WhatsApp group, myself and Andy included, and we're never all in the same place. I mean, Red Smith's one of them. He's over in France, and the rest of us all scattered around the country. So to actually get us all together to get a photo of us, there was about 6 different shots from 2 different angles with 2 different photographers. And I think there's one where all of us are looking at the same camera and all with our eyes open. But all of the other photos are various states of like eyes closed or open or looking somewhere else or stupid faces. Or... So you sort of need those additional photos now just to say to.
That's a great picture, though. I remember I saw it when it, someone posted that on in Full of Tools, and that's a great picture.
It is. It is.
Yeah, there's an old guy at the end with a stick. Yeah, that was a bit of a shock to the system.
Silly.
It's almost as good as a photo of me being very tiny, stood in between Duncan and Taria.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not often you look tiny.
No, exactly. Yeah, loads of my friends have commented on that. Just like, bloody hell, who are those 2?
They're just tall, big guys.
Very big kids.
It's
worse because they're lovely as well.
Yeah, the thing is, we interact so much online. We don't actually know. Height is one of the things that we rarely get a measure of.
Everyone's this big.
Yeah, because even if you watch somebody's YouTube video, generally they're on their own, and so there's no necessarily a good reference to kind of height. You can't think, well, they're just normal sort of sized, and then you kind of meet them, and you kind of like, with Duncan, it's just like, oh, there you are.
Yeah, that was kind of like with the when Austin from High Caliber Craftsman, he had the High Caliber camp last fall for some of the folks in the Mozzies group, and so they were all standing up, next to each other. It's like, oh, I wouldn't have guessed that so and so was that tall or not that tall or whatever. So it's kind of funny because we all knew each other just from online for the most part, and then when you do have that opportunity
on screen, you're all the same height. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's both odd, but it's absolutely amazing that we can build up these relationships with people. We can build up relationships with friends and develop friendships, and it's not based on locality. We can find those people that we can relate to.
Yeah.
I think
absolutely.
Absolutely kind of amazing. I mean, without the internet, there's no way, Christy, we would probably have ever met.
Nope.
I've never been to the States. I don't think you've ever been to the UK.
I've never been out of the States. No. So, it's funny. And I think, we can connect really even more than just superficially through conversations or sharing our lives, especially those that we interact on a daily basis or even just weekly, and y'all are my friends, and the folks that I have never met in person, from that I met just through Instagram or YouTube or whatever, those are legit friends that I talk to more than my neighbors or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's
I don't
okay.
like most of my neighbors.
Well, I think there's an element of like, kind of in days gone by, it was meet friends down the pub or go out somewhere, and it's those little snippets of life that you get the interaction with, whereas now we can have a near permanent conversation over the course of days or weeks with someone without those breaks in communication between it's like, oh, I'll meet you next week for a couple of hours of down the bowling alley or something like that, whereas now it's just chat all day long.
Yeah. And then, it's kind of the highs and lows we catch now too. If you're having a day or a bad day, I think we just kind of get into the habit of sharing. I think we share more now than we ever did.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Internet or the internet and social media and stuff like that. And whether it's Discord or Facebook or whatever, sometimes it might be a little too much information that we were sharing. But, I think it's important for us to find out that we're not the only person dealing with something or struggling with something or even having opportunities to do certain things or see certain things or go certain places. I mean, I think, it's just a wealth of opportunity out there.
Absolutely. I mean, even just to to that point of, the usefulness that friends have, whether it's for, as a sounding board for, problem solving, or as, to talk with from a mental health perspective, or for, whatever use that person has in your life, outside of just their presence with you. The amount of times that I had conversations with friends who are in different countries, or various parts of the world, and we've been able to have a discussion that's very deep and meaningful, or then suddenly flick the camera on and take a photo or a video of something that you're working on, and then get instant feedback from another perspective, from another way of doing things in another part of the world, or that kind of immediacy of communication as well. I think it just massively opens up so much more of the world.
Tapping into expertise.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And given, advice or taking advice, and, don't do it that way, or I tried that. You could try it, but be careful of ABC or whatever, when, different people are working on projects, or if I'm wanting to work on a project and I'm thinking, is this going to turn out like I think it's going to or not? So having that amount of people to be able to touch base with and find out if you're totally in left field, or if you might actually be going down the right path or something. I mean, my maker journey would not be, it wouldn't be here for sure, but I don't know that it would have been anywhere if it wasn't for YouTube and social media and getting to interact with folks that helped me, because I didn't have anyone in my life that really made stuff that, like, I like to make stuff now. So all of this that I do is totally been brought around a lot by folks that I've met online, or some in person, but online too. And I mean, that's just fantastic, because it's a journey that is something I hold very, very dear in my day-to-day life now. It's something I identify with,
Yeah, I think that's a key thing. Discovering that actually there is this thing, being a maker,
right?
Whether it's a specific branch of making, like woodwork or wood turner or resin artist, but it doesn't matter. Just being a maker and knowing that there are other people out there that enjoy the same things and get the same output and the same enjoyment. Right. I think it's nice knowing that there's a group that one can belong to.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, even down to the point of like, that tapping into expertise and things. Certain people might not have had access to, to be able to learn how to fix something in the house, for instance. It might have just been, there might be in a small town where there is a person who does the repair work for everyone in the town. So, to have access to social media, or to have instant communication with someone somewhere else, to be able to figure out how to fix it yourself without having to rely on, that one tradesperson who knows how to do it, or, things like that. I think just that in and of itself opens up so much for so many.
Right. And then I think you kind of get a little more confidence built up too. Once you try something, that was like when I moved in 2018, I bought my house. I had gotten divorced, so I bought my house, and so there were some random things that I needed to do around the house. And so once I kind of watched a YouTube video or had someone ask kind of questions about, and then I fixed a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then, I mean, it just snowballs in a great way, as far as just having some form of confidence that, okay, I'm buying the right tool in case I want to do this, or I do want to do this, or I need to fix this or whatever, especially, then I was I had my house on my own and I wanted to do everything myself.
And knowing that it's possible.
Right.
Yeah. And
exactly.
Yeah. Knowing that there are people that you can call on.
Right.
I think something we talked about in the past. Yeah. I think for so often women are told, "Oh, you can't do that. That's a man's job."
Absolutely.
But actually, when you get on YouTube, you can go, "Oh, look, actually, that's completely a load of crock," because there's some fantastic role models there.
Yeah.
Big time.
Take something like Tamar, as a woodworker.
Right.
There's not many woodworkers that are better than her on YouTube, I think.
I agree totally. Yeah, and that it's okay to go into a store, a big box store, a Lowe's, a Home Depot, or whatever y'all have over there, to ask questions, but ask, at least I know what I'm asking for or about now that I've learned a little more, and then be able to use those tools or kind of work with that. And I remember when early on, I was building a workbench, and I was in line at Lowe's checking out, and the guy behind me, we started chatting about it. And I said, yeah, because I had a bunch of lumber. And he's like, well, what are you building? I said, oh, I'm building my workbench. He's like, oh, that's cool. He was so chill. We had a really good conversation. But then I looked at the lady checking me out, and she's like, you're building a workbench for yourself? And I was like, girl, you are not helping my case here. Because he was like totally supportive, and we were just chit-chatting, and she was just like, I'm like, you're just taking the air out of me completely. But I'm like, that's okay. I'm going to build my workbench.
Working in a Home Depot.
Right.
Home Depot, yeah. But if you're going to work there,
at least have the inclination that, everyone can do this stuff. It's not
right.
Don't need to gatekeep it and make the problem worse.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you're selling it to regular homeowners. It's okay to encourage and be positive, because
they'll come back and buy more stuff.
Yeah.
Just looking at the obvious.
Yeah, but it's been an interesting journey for sure. Within just a matter of just a few years. I think back 5 years ago, and I just never would have guessed that the opportunities that I've had and the folks that I've met and stuff like that it just still is kind of mind-boggling a little bit, and I just appreciate all the folks, along the way. It's been pretty interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
But I think it's common in the maker community. There's a ton of people that would say that exact same thing,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think so many people, I mean, I've talked about this in the past as well. I've always been a maker. I never knew I was a maker, and I didn't necessarily know other people. I knew there were people into crafts and hobbies and people into woodwork. It's not that I didn't know that, but I didn't necessarily appreciate that actually I can be part of a community with them.
Right.
And I can learn from them, and I can become friends with them, and I can help them as well.
Right.
And it's not just about kind of who lives next door or kind of a relative you might see every now and again. Yeah, it can be people that, as we've talked about, we talk to every single day. Yeah. And they become really good friends.
Yeah. That is so true. So true.
I mean, would you have thought 5 years ago that you'd be actually kind of hosting a podcast about making?
I wouldn't have guessed that 14 months ago, because we've been doing it about 13 months, and I don't know that even 14 months ago I would have guessed that we'd be a year down the road and still making the podcast. But that has been it's just been one of those things that's just been more enjoyable than I even thought it would be. Sorry,
totally get that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you're about. I mean, this is our 52nd episode today, so this is our.
Oh yeah, you guys have been around about the same time. Yeah,
we're completing our first year. I don't know whether this year. Does today count as our year finished, or next week that's going to count? I've been sort of pondering that all week. We should celebrate both, I think.
Yeah, I'm such a numbers nerd, with our podcast, and so that's why I'm like, okay, when is our anniversary? Is it like the anniversary is the day that we recorded our very first episode, or is the anniversary the day that we posted our very? I am a total over analyzer. I will be the first to admit, but I love that. I'm a numbers person. I'm an accountant. I love to analyze. I love to analyze numbers, even if they're really irrelevant. You know what I mean? We're going to do the podcast. we're going to do the podcast regardless of the numbers. But I just, I'm just super curious how things ebb and flow and just kind of how they do. And but like I said, I'm a numbers nerd. So I like talking about all of it, but I realize I do not want to make everybody fall asleep. So I'm not going to dig into that because legit, I know most people are like, oh, I'll pass on numbers.
I wouldn't worry that anyone who's got this far with me and Andy probably had many points where they've nearly fallen asleep. I mean, I remember right at the very start when Andy and I were discussing doing this, and we sort of said, well, we're doing this for us because it's something we want to do. Even if we make it to 10 episodes, it's a start. There's 52 now.
Mm-hmm.
It's several hundred hours.
Yeah, it's hundreds of hours of people listening to wonderful, interesting people, and me and Andy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and see, that's kind of that's how we started too, and maybe it was. I think it was we were just being selfish. I mean, let's just be real. We were just being selfish. Well, yeah. We wanted excuses for having opportunities to talk with other makers.
That's exactly what we said here.
Yeah. We wanted to pick their brain on why and how they made projects, because I'm always, as we all are seeing folks making projects, and I'm just like, how in the world did they think of that? Why in the world did they think of that? Where did that come from? And that kind of thing. And so that's the thing with, the Making Our Way podcast that I do with Dean Duplantis and Austin from High Caliber Craftsman. We focus on projects, which I think is a little different than most.
I think it's fairly unique because we had a little chat before we started, didn't we? Before we sort of started, I remember us having a kind of a little sort of chat in sort of private messages, talking about it, because I don't think.
Yeah.
I know of podcasts where particular projects have been discussed, but it's not on a this is what we do basis.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But that's what you do, because you pick a project.
Right.
Well, I mean, from the sounds of it, it's essentially the yin to our yang, because we always forget that these people that we have on do projects, and we just talk about all the other inane random stuff that surrounds all the projects that they do.
Yeah, but I think that's so interesting though too, because like you said, it is the other side of the coin, and that's interesting. Just finding out those unique situations and maybe even something that comes up that you didn't know about a person that'll come up in just a regular conversation like this. Gives that extra connection, that extra, just where you're like, oh, I didn't realize they were into that too. If that comes up that I've got questions or I know something about that, I might shoot them a message or whatever. And, that's just a great opportunity for more interacting.
Just overlap of guests between the two podcasts then. Just feeding each other's.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll chase some of your guests. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Do you find it difficult or easy to sort of pick a particular project from a guest?
Since we're only a year in, it's not been too difficult, because a lot of times it's just something that jumps out at us, or it's somebody that we know, and we've just been curious. And for some of our guests, it's not been the traditional project, because like Mark Adams, who's a photographer, came on. And that was, I've met Mark a couple times, and he just takes such awesome pictures. I mean, I don't like having my picture taken typically. It's taken me a long time to get used to putting myself in my own pictures with my projects and stuff. But there's something about the black and white maker photos that he takes at events that are just, I mean, they're just so awesome. And, that was, and I've enjoyed every interview that we've had with every maker. There's not been anybody that I've just been like, dear God, what were we thinking? But we do kind of go a little off the reservation a little bit as far as like photography. We had Dave Swidek with talking about podcasting and storytelling. And, we just had the lady on, Carolina from Charcuterie Board HTX. I mean, she makes charcuterie boards. Now, we were hungry as all get out whenever we were talking to her about that. But we also were talking about her building her business, because she took like a hobby and turn it into a business, which I think a lot of makers, that's what they want to do, you know?
Mm.
So just kind of finding out different ways of how someone turns their hobby into a business, I think is really, is also really beneficial. So far it's been a lot of fun, trying to find, finding guests and setting things up. And we've about a third of our guests so far have been first time podcast people. And I remember the first time I was asked to be on a podcast, and I was like, and every time still, I mean, even Andy, whenever you messaged me, I'm like, oh yes. And I do have to say, I was most excited about the fact that neither Dean nor Austin have been on here yet. So the fact that you invited me before the guys, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that very much.
We might get around to them at some point.
Yeah.
I'm sure we will.
But I was first.
Probably on the list somewhere.
So I'm going to have to rub that in a little bit on them. I was first. So that's important for us to.
Ladies first.
There we go.
We won't make comments about getting the interesting guests on first.
Well, we can't rub it into because But yes, I'm sure at some point in time, and they are great guys. They're great conversations.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed getting to know both of them, and we talk constantly throughout the day, just about our lives too. Like we were talking about just now. So that's been I guess maybe a little bit of a surprise. I wasn't anticipating getting so attached to those two, but it has been a lot of fun.
I totally get that. I mean,
yeah,
Andy knows to sort of chat anyway in the WhatsApp groups and stuff, and it's exactly that. We're just chatting all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's been great for the friendships.
Yep.
So there's a lot to be said for it.
I think it is. I would encourage anyone who's kind of doesn't have to be makers, but if you just listen to this, if there are people, you can find your tribe, and it might take there may be kind of a few times where you kind of go, oh, that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
And I've made a few of those. I've kind of gone, I'll get this person, and I used to be fairly good at sort of judging people, kind of getting a gut instinct, and it's been a bit hit and miss the last few years. I've made mistakes. I mean, I do that in everyday life as well. You kind of think, oh, this person, I seem to get on well with this person. Then you discover kind of maybe something about them. You're going to go, no, I'm not going to spend any more time with that person. That's kind of, I didn't realize that they were, whatever. It doesn't matter what the thing is. But if it's something that kind of, makes you kind of go, no, I'm not comfortable with that. That's not the sort of person I want to get to know. Right. Yes, they appear. Yeah, it's that kind of classic thing of, if you get somebody you go out to dinner with someone and they're perfectly nice to you, but then they're abusive to the waiting staff.
Right.
That's probably a sign that they're not really a very nice person.
That's, yes, very true.
And it can, it's a sort of similar sort of thing, but there are people that you can get to know. You can find your tribe. You can find those people that you can kind of go, I've had a really, really bad day and I need to talk to someone. Are you available to listen? And people go, yeah, sure.
Well, and I think especially after the last couple of years, with COVID and everything over the last couple of years, finding, since we weren't going out as much, we weren't interacting with the neighbors, or we weren't going to concerts or to movies even, or whatever, finding folks that you can interact with or connect with or learn from, because it was like I was just so hungry for real information when everything started happening a couple of years ago. I didn't want the news. I listened to the podcasts. I listened to Knife Talk. I listened to, I was already listening to Fools with Tools. Just listening to who I knew were real people talking about real life all over the world, what everybody was going through, similar but yet very, very different. So I found podcasts really to be my way to feel connected and to feel informed, because there's no benefit or no advantage or disadvantage for, someone on a podcast talking about what their daily life is, as opposed to, what you might hear on the news or don't hear on the news or whatever. So that was, podcasts in the maker community was very important to me during a time where I was just wanting the truth,
Absolutely.
And I think certainly there's a huge number of podcasts I listen to now where there are people that I call friends who podcast, whether it's the Fools of Tools guys or Two-Thirds Focused, they're people I know fairly well, reasonably well. I call them friends. I've given them all hugs. It's it's kind of they're people that I care about, and I want to know kind of what's happening in their lives. And it's I know that there's a level of honesty from those people, which is kind of why I like them. Because one of the things that I particularly can't like is where there's kind of a lack of integrity from people. I've certainly cut off myself from people where there's that kind of exhibits. There's a guy in my village who I used to be fairly good friends with, but they're particularly over actually through the lockdown and the pandemic, exhibited significant lack of integrity. It's just like, whoa, that's not something I'm prepared to tolerate. As a person, but they didn't see a problem. So it's like, well, okay, you're not part of my life anymore.
Right. And I think it's important to make those decisions, because we have to, protect ourselves both emotionally, physically, mentally, everything, and so if there's a bad egg in the bunch, you just have to, sometimes you just have to make tough decisions, but it's for the good of everybody and yourself. And more importantly,
I think that kind of loops back to what we were talking about earlier with the connection to instant communication for anywhere. It makes that a lot easier to separate yourself from some negativity in your life. In a group of friends, if you've got 5 of you all end up down the pub and that's your interaction with your group of friends, that becomes a lot more difficult to separate out if there's one particular person who you then discover is a bad egg. Whereas if it's groups of friends or people you chat to through social media, or even just text messages or WhatsApp or email or whatever, it's a lot easier to that disconnect, to be able to kind of separate yourself from it, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
And to change one's attention, kind of from one area, it's much easier to kind of go, right, I'm going to spend less time on there, I'm going to spend more time here.
Yeah, we definitely have to, and that was kind of the thing when COVID kicked in over here. My work went from, I'm an accountant, and I'll save everybody the nausea of hearing about accounting jobs. I'm an accountant, I do accounting things. But we went from a traditional 8 to 5-day a week work cycle to I worked 2 days a week, because we can't work from home. So I was only in the office because we did a rotating shift kind of schedule. So I had 5 days off all of a sudden, which was the most bizarro thing in the world. But that gave me an opportunity to do more in my own workshop in the house and get to know so many more people, online, just with the different social media interaction that I had and stuff. So, even with as bad as it has been over the last couple of years, there have been some good things that have come out of it. And I'm very appreciative of those opportunities. And I think we have to just make a point to take those opportunities, when they come available, like hopping on the Makers on Zoom, having coffee randomly, seeing someone post who's someone I didn't even really interact with at all, except for I just might be followed on Instagram, and, hey, we're going to have a Zoom chat on a Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, hey, why not? And that just sends you down a whole different rabbit trail now over the last couple of years with that crazy bunch of folks, but you do have to find your tribe, your group, whether it's, like the Fools with Tools through their podcast, or just a random Zoom chat, or the there's just so many of those kind of groups, and you just kind of find who you're comfortable with, and they're so beneficial.
Absolutely.
I think the great thing about those kind of groups is that which I particularly like, is that it's not one form of making.
Right.
I have in the past listened to kind of one type of making specific podcasts, for example, whether it's something, woodworking, or whether it's knife making. And I don't anymore, to be honest. I can't think of a single podcast. I mean, there's a few I listen to that are more for information. So I listen to there's a couple of photography ones I listen to. There's a couple of, there's a writing one I listen to. But apart from those, I'm not listening to those for the personality. I'm listening to those more for kind of to learn more about those processes.
Right.
I'm not getting to know those people. I'm not going to interact with those people. I might sort of send them a message saying, "I really enjoyed that particular episode of that podcast." But generally, I'm there to listen to what they have to say, because they are in high position in their craft.
Right.
But generally, I much prefer the kind of now the podcasts where it's you've got a blacksmith, a model maker, and a mixed maker, a leather maker, or you've got kind of something like Fools with Tools, where you've got kind of again a blacksmith, another blacksmith, but also makes other stuff, and you've got kind of Al, who makes just anything and everything. So listening to those, I mean, listening to your podcast, you've got woodworkers, you've got, I mean, Dean makes a variety of things. I mean, Austin mostly metal, but does make other stuff. He does a bit of, he does turning for the pens. He does forging for things, leather work. Yeah. So it's kind of having that mixed bag, I think, is just so much more fulfilling in a way.
Right.
Not quite the right word, but it gives more than just listening to one. For me, that one sort of channel of, we do this particular thing, and we're only going to talk about whether it's knives or whether it's woodworking. I like having that kind of mix of things.
Right. Especially if I'm wanting to learn. Like early on, I listened to, while it was still a podcast, The Dusty Life, and they were talking about woodworking. And I was still so hungry to learn, and I'm still hungry to learn about woodworking, even though that's more what I do. But listening to them, because they took questions and gave answers and stuff on how to do things, or specifically about woodworking. So I needed that early in my woodworking journey, but I would give credit more to other folks that I've met online that have gotten me into doing leather work, or a little more resin, or I haven't done metal work yet, but I anticipate doing more of that. But it's because of those friends that have helped me learn what I'm doing, learn that it's not as scary as I might think, because, some things are extremely intimidating to watch. And then you're like, yeah, I think I want to do that. Or even, oddly enough, one of the most intimidating things was making that lamp a couple years ago for the Because We Make Enlighten Us challenge. I'm like, oh, okay, wait a minute. You want me to work with electricity? Like, I'm supposed to plug this into the wall and not burn my house down? Because honestly, that scared me more than anything. But then once I did it, once I took a lamp apart and I got replacement parts and put it together, I was like, okay, cool. This was not as difficult as I thought it would be. So I just felt like that was just a personal accomplishment for me to not burn my house down. I've had that lamp for almost 2 years now, and I use it regularly. So I'm like,
Hey.
That's a win in my book anyway.
It's demystifying the scary aspect of it, isn't it? It's that, like we said before, about kind of showing you can do something, making it's bringing that accessibility to making anything or fixing anything.
Yep.
I'm finding, I think that the beauty I like of kind of the social media side of things, and getting to know groups and following mixed making podcasts like yours, is getting to know new people.
Right.
And I mean, it takes something like, I mean, you've had him on, I'm pretty sure, Chris from Route 9 Signs.
No, we haven't had him
You
on
not
yet.
had him on yet?
No, but he does
Full
make
Tools has mentioned him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody mentioned his, because his work is just really, really amazing.
I would never have come across that by accident.
Right. Right.
For anyone who doesn't know his work and if they're not already a Full Tools fan and followed I think it might have been Brett that spiffed him. Definitely worth checking out.
And just from our conversation this evening on the Discord, keep an eye out on his Instagram page because he's having a great day.
Yes. Yeah, we won't spoil.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil any spoilers, but y'all need to keep an eye on that as he posts things for the next couple of days because he's having a great day.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Not at all jealous about that one.
Yeah.
It's well deserved. It's well
Absolutely.
deserved why he's having a great day. So
yes. Yep.
Yeah.
I think if I already follow him or not.
Well, make sure if you don't yet, make sure you hop on that one. Yeah. And that's just cool and exciting to see folks getting around beyond, I think, what we consider our small parts of the maker community too. I mean, I even think about, the Making Fun TV show, to be able to see folks from the different areas or even Ivan Eiler on I'm going to mess up the name of the show he was on Netflix. But he's a metal worker, and to be on a Netflix show like that, I mean, it's just a great opportunity for all kinds of makers to be able to see what is beyond, just our community here.
I mean, there's some great TV. I mean, I think probably the UK we're particularly blessed with some really good making TV. Whether it's things like The Repair Shop.
Oh yeah,
which I think you guys get on.
We get that here. Yes.
And there's quite a few sort of programs. There's one called Money for Nothing, which is the premise is the host of the show goes to the local dump and intercepts 3 items that people are throwing away.
Oh, okay.
And then so it could be an old sofa, it could be a picture frame, it could be some vintage fire extinguisher, or all literally anything that takes their fancy. They then pass those items on to, or 2 of the items onto an expert. So it might be somebody like Chris Fisher, the blind woodturner. He's been taking part. So they'll pass it on to somebody who's essentially a professional, who will then take that item and do something with it. So they have a budget. They kind of they're not doing it for free. They kind of they'll say, look, I can turn this sofa into a dining table for £300. And then the host takes one as well because they're makers. And at the end of the show, they will sell the items get sold. They don't always sell, but normally they get sold through kind of eBay or the like. And then they turn back up to the person who threw it away. They go back to their house and sort of say, you gave us this item. We spent £300, but we sold it for £500. Here's £200.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's a daytime TV type of show. It's it's a bit of fun, and it's not quite enough making in my mind, but it is. They're still making. There's still people sort of trying things out. And certainly, it was something that encouraged me to kind of sort of consider myself a maker when I sort of spent time watching it. And we've had others. There's the kind of various kind of woodworking, Britain's best woodworker, potter, all kind of sorts of glass blowing. The Great British Bake Off. Sewing bee, these sort of things. It's nice to sort of see people making.
Yeah, it is, and I think it kind of brings it outside of the. It brings it outside, especially when you get it on streaming programs like Netflix or whatever. So it kind of expands it, especially if it's a younger audience, might be more likely to watch it, Or, I mean, I think of even, I know some folks aren't a big fan of the Forged in Fire, but, you know, just look at how many more folks have gotten into, you know, forge blacksmithing or knife making or whatever as a hobby. And, you know, I think having a hobby, having a distraction or whatever you want to call it, I think that's just really important for everybody, whether it is something that we do or if you like to write or you like to read or you like to exercise or whatever. I mean, I think it's very important to have something just of your own or in your own little your extra. Now, and I realize not everybody has extra time, but I just think that's it's good for your, like we were talking about, mental health, if nothing else, just to kind of give you something, a nice escape sometimes is important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think creativity or releasing creativity in whatever form that is, I think is amazing for people. And it's a shame we don't. Exercise is good for us, but I think we should all exercise more. We should all eat less, or we should eat better, and we should all. I think we should all find some way to release creativity. Whether, like you say, whether it's writing, whether it's sewing, whether it's just sort of kneading bits of Fimo clay and baking it in the oven, or whether it's developing a drawing practice, or whether it's building a workshop and making knives, making tables, making mixed media stuff. I mean, like the handbag you made, a combination of materials. I think if more people did that, I think we possibly would have generally a better world. People would be healthier. I think. I'd like to think anyway.
Yeah, I would think so too. I'd like to think that too.
Now, one of the projects that I want to talk about, because you discovered a little while ago that your grandmother, I think, had been journaling for sort of 30 or 40 years.
Yes.
And you've done something with that. Would you like to sort of tell people about it?
Yes. My grandmother, she every day since my grandfather passed away, which was about the mid-70s, she had a journal about it was a little bit bigger than like this size. And she would write down the spread would have the 7 days out. And she would just write down everything she did. Every person she talked to, everything she went and done. She went to get groceries. She planted beets. She worked in the garden. She moved the cattle across to the other field. Part of it was for her own reference so that she knew, oh, this is normally, last year I did this time, so I need to make sure I do it again or whatever. Or keep track of something like, something with the farm, because she was still managing the farm at the time. And so she wrote down every day until she passed away in 2012. She wrote down every day what she did. And it's kind of funny because even like some days it's, washed my hair or whatever. Sometimes it was just such a simple thing that was like, it's not like that was an unusual thing for her to do. She washed her hair all the time, but for some reason, that's what she wrote down that day. But then other days it was like the Pope was shot, or, when Reagan was shot, President Reagan was shot, or when 9/11 happened, or when the Joplin tornadoes happened. So it has been interesting to read through years and years and years and years of her life and for her perspective. And, like I said, my grandfather had passed away, before she started journaling all this. So over the years, she had a couple gentlemen friend. So that has been interesting to see that perspective from grandma. And she didn't, put any juicy details about her relationships. But one, Floyd was the name of her first gentleman friend, and he ended up dying of cancer. And I'm telling you what, I'm going to get choked up thinking about it now because, she wrote about all the trips to the hospital and all the treatments. And I mean, it's just like, it just puts my perspective of her a little bit different as a human. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, when they're grandma, they're grandma. But when they're a human and she's a woman and she's a neighbor and she's a grandma and she's she sings in the church choir, stuff like that. So it's just been really interesting to kind of see her from a different perspective. So we've gone through all, however many years that is, and typed it all up, typed it in Word, every day, the date, the activities, pretty much verbatim like she has. Sometimes we've kind of need to edit a little bit because just to kind of make it, she's very much a list maker, kind of like I am. So I kind of am seeing some of my tendencies based on how she is. So we've kind of had to do a little tweaking, but for the most part, it's verbatim from her account. And so we've got it's a 3-volume set now, and each book is about 500 pages. So we're pushing 1,500 pages of information between these three volumes. And so the goal is, and what we're in the process of doing, is through the Amazon self-publishing feature that they have. Once I load it all up, I have to, make sure we're in the process of doing the final edits for the second and third book. And so, I've had to make sure we've got the cover on and the table of contents and everything flows and works and everything. And so once we get done with this final edit, then we will load it back up on Amazon. And so then my cousins, my siblings, any of the family that wants to order this set of books of grandma's, they can order them directly. They'll be, printed, bound, softback. They're not hardback. But, I had no idea how to self-publish. And it was another situation where I was in another group of ladies, Marion Ward from Creative Ward Gallery. I kind of joined a group of ladies that did a wide variety of type of making, but also they were publishers and they were writers and a little bit of everything. So they kind of gave me a direction to where to go, because otherwise I would have been totally clueless on how to, where to even look, where to even start. So that was just a needle in the haystack that I needed. And then we've been able to use that website and get everything loaded. And we printed, I shipped to my mom and myself a set. And then now we're going through and, like I said, doing that final edit. But to see in book form something that we've been working on for, 6 or 8 years now, unfortunately, life happens and things get set aside for a while. But my mom has been, she just was typing her heart out. And there was times that we would have like the cousins or siblings over, and there'd be like 10 or 12 of us between the kitchen and the living room or the porch or whatever. And, half a dozen laptops out. And so there'd be one person sitting with the journal, reading it to the other person typing. And then somebody'd be like, oh, wait, I just found a funny story, so then we'd all stop and we'd be like, oh, I remember when grandma, blah, blah, blah. And we got a big laugh out of it. So it really, the process of putting this together has been as enjoyable and as important to us as I think even when at the very end, when we end up getting the end result of these books. So, it has just been it has been a priceless process. And hopefully, I was hoping Easter we were going to have it done, but with everything else that's going on, we've not managed to get that far. But hopefully, within the next few months, we'll be able to finish. So then all the rest of the cousins and everybody can go ahead and order them and just flip through and read through as to what grandma was up to or her perspective of how things were. It's just been a priceless process.
I can well imagine.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
As Tom in the chat has sort of mentioned, if you want it hardback, you could probably do some bookbinding.
Yeah, I have been kind of looking at that too, as far as how to kind of adapt that a little bit. To
It is
because
possible to take a softback book and turn it into a
yes,
hardback
yeah,
fairly easily.
yeah. So yeah, I might be knocking on some friends in the community to kind of give me a hand with that because it's taken a lot of time, but I like the idea of it being on a hardback just because it's just more. It's got some
Mm.
longevity with it more so than a softback. But so I'm just looking forward to being able to have that set. And for my kids, my girls are in their 20s now, so they knew their great grandma fairly well because they were in their teens when she passed away. But there's things about grandma that they didn't know, just different things. And even there was one year in the 50s where grandma had written out a journal when my mom was just 4 years old. And she wrote down every day, Mary Jane had no temperature. Mary Jane had no temperature. Mary Jane had 101 temperature. So every day there was like, she was taking my mom's fever and my mom was 4 years old. I'm like, what was going on? And she's like, yeah, I had, they were afraid I had, gosh, no, what's it called? There was like some medical condition that they were testing her for every day. So they had to take her temperature or check to see if she had
Mm.
fever. And I had no idea that was, a thing or a scare when my mom was young. So that's been an interesting process just to kind of learn a little more about my mom, even though I've known her for 47 years, that there's stuff about her that I didn't even actually know. So I just think it's been fun. And I think it's something that we don't ask the generations up from us. We don't ask about when they were
Mm.
our age. What
Yeah.
was it like when they were teenagers or whatever? So, it I think that's a question we need to ask,
I think
I was
I think
having
it is.
Yeah.
yeah, I was having a conversation with our good friend Ellen the other day,
Oh yeah. Mhm.
and talking about that, that kind of, that moment of growing up when you realize your parents are also humans,
Yeah.
and that kind of that realization, and like when when there's someone at the door and you open the door and they don't say, "Is there an adult present?" It's that kind of like realization when you become an adult yourself and then you see your
Right.
parents as peers, then and that kind of thing. My mum's been threatening to write her memoirs for years, and we all keep trying to sort of gently encourage her and that kind of thing. But to have that insight into someone's life over such a long period of time as well,
Right.
it must have, like you said anyway, but it reframed your view of her,
Hmm.
and it must have been such a realization and a revelation to realize how human she actually was, rather than just being a grandmother or just being a
Right.
parent. Or
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, she was born and raised in Argyle, Missouri, population of 102, period. So everything is small town. And I think there's something beautiful about that too.
mm,
She every election she sat on the polls, her and a couple of the other ladies, they would be like, we got up at 4 o'clock in the morning because she always had her time. Every time, when she got up at 4, did this at this time, did that at that time. When she had something in particular that was time sensitive. So, just going to go pick up the ballots and sitting on the polls, and they had 35 votes, and whatever the situation was. And then one night it was such a bad storm that somebody had to house the ballots overnight. And I'm like, oh, scandal, something so nowadays, oh my gosh, that would be the end of the world. But it was just, I think it's just a great glimpse of a different time than most people would ever think, you know,
mm.
how it has been over the last, 30 years in very small town America.
Has that exercise inspired you or your family to start writing your own journals for the same kind of reason?
My mom and I are already note takers. as far as like when we refer to them as captain's logs. So like when we go on vacation, I don't think I've got any of them handy, but yeah, we have what's called the captain's logs. And my mom started it without really thinking about the fact that grandma would keep track of everything. But anytime we go on vacation, this little, some form of binder or some form of notebook or whatever, and it's like these are the people on the trip. This is the day time we leave. X number of miles we go down to the road. You know, if it's a road trip, for example, you know, we went down 235 miles into the trip. This is the time we stopped. This is the place we stopped. This is what I bought. Cheetos, a bottle of water, and, you know, and this notebook that I'm writing on right now, you know, that kind of thing. And so through the entire trip, and it's not necessarily just me writing it. You know, sometimes if I'm driving, I'm like, oh, Anna, can you update? We just crossed over the, you know, the Kansas state line or whatever. Or Tuesday night we went out to dinner and this was the restaurant we went to, or whatever. So we literally would write down the captain's log for the whole entire vacation. And that's just become a very important part of our vacation trips because we look back at it later. Because like when I was when I was married the first time on our honeymoon, we drove up to Montana. We did a big 3,000-mile road trip. And so I was jotting down every time we stopped somewhere, how many miles, what was the price of gas, you know, all that kind of stuff. So then a number of years later, my girls and myself and my mom and a couple of my siblings, we did a similar route. So I was like, okay, I want to look back and see how long did it take us to get there? Where did we stop exactly? What are things we might want to do with these, you know, with a different group of people on this similar road trip? You know, I just think that's a great opportunity to kind of keep a glimpse of history besides pictures. And then even if you're going back and building a photo album, my sisters, after vacations, you know, like a month later, they're trying to put their photo album together. They're like, which day did we do this? Or which day did we do that? You know, that kind of thing, to kind of get more specifics about a vacation, just to, you know, to include it on theirs. So yes, we actually kind of do a similar situation. It's usually more specific rather than an everyday, you know. I don't know that I necessarily want my girls to have to deal with everyday journaling from me later on in life.
Start typing it. Type your journal.
Yeah. I have thought of it, but then again, I'm like, you know, there's a lot of things on my to-do list. So I don't know at this point in time. I mean, I keep a journal. This is my actual daily journal because I think I forget most things if I didn't jot them down in a journal. It's not the same format as what Grandma did, or even the same format as the captain's log. It's kind of more of a keep
Tuesday,
track.
dentist.
Yes, exactly. Or
sounds like my Google Calendar.
Yeah. And that, yeah, it's definitely more along the line, or when was the last time I had my nails done or whatever. So I get that done. Make sure I don't miss that on rotation.
I mean, you mentioned being busy. Oh, you're frozen. You're frozen. Oh, no, there you are. You mentioned being busy. I mean, you're currently in the process of building a new workshop, aren't you?
Yes. In the last little over a year, I sold my prior house and shop, and Marvin sold his house. We bought another house, which is this one, and we got married. And so then, since the house we bought it only had a single car garage, which I actually want to use as a garage. So we are building a 2-car garage size workshop. And it is been a long process, but we're kind of doing it pretty much on our own. Marvin is my husband. He's a contractor. His day-to-day, his job is as a contractor. I don't think I would ever, I'm pretty certain I would not take on building a shop from scratch if he was not driving the bus on this one, because it is extremely involved. And it's been just a great learning experience. It's been a lot of physical labor that I'm not used to doing, because I mean, like I said, I'm an accountant. I am used to setting and doing my job. So, working gravel and pouring concrete and hanging, different, hanging siding on the exterior and using the
because
blocks.
you're making it particularly solid, aren't you? You're not just throwing up essentially what we would call a shed in the UK.
Right, exactly. They're called ICF blocks, and they're like huge Legos is really what they are. So they're styrofoam on the side, 3 inches of styrofoam, and then there's a webbing that connects those styrofoam. It's not actually styrofoam, but it's a styrofoam type insulation. And so there's a webbing that's kind of connected it. And then they have like Lego style feet and tops. So you literally are stacking them, and then you put rebar along every layer. And then I think we were about 10 stacks high. And then once you get it all built and framed, held in place, then you pour concrete in the wall. So in essence, it's concrete walls. Now, where it's located next to our side of the house is kind of recessed into the ground. So it's kind of earth contact. So the back corner of the shop is about 7 feet underground. So it's really just a little bit of the first floor, and then the roof line from the back is what it looks like. And then there is the upstairs is an attic type space. We'll have storage. You can never have too much storage. So that's what that we will have. We'll be storing all kinds of things up there, and we'll see kind of how that tweaks out. But it has been such a learning experience for like I said, because it's just nothing that I ever would have pursued. But our goal, besides having a workshop for the woodworking, and then Marvin have an area for some of his hobbies as well, and then have the storage space underneath. We are in Southwest Missouri, which is pretty much smack dab in the middle of the United States. And we are what's referred to as being in Tornado Alley. So it's unfortunately, very common to have tornadoes through here. So one of the other benefits of having the shop right next to the house and the concrete walls and all of the reinforcements is that back corner, the back room corner will be what we refer to as will be our safe room for if the weather gets really bad or if they're anticipating tornadoes, because our house doesn't have a basement or anything like that, or any kind of storm shelter. So yeah, I mean, it is a workshop, but it's kind of like a workshop on steroids, because we're definitely want it to be multi-purpose to kind of give us that extra added protection and extra space with all the storage upstairs, and to kind of keep our hobbies out there. I mean, we have our leather working stuff up here in the upstairs of the house, and some of our other just our podcasting stuff or all that kind of stuff is here on the second floor too. So, and maybe that's the benefit of once your kids are gone and you've got the house all to yourself, you can put your hobbies wherever you want to.
Say everything becomes a project room.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's something to look forward to. Any folks that have those kids and they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do whenever my kids have gone off. You're going to enjoy life is what you're going to do. I mean, we love having the kids there, but there's some wonderful things to look forward to when empty nesting comes in. They
just take up space, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, empty nesting is a wonderful thing.
Not quite empty nesting, but we're our homeschool, because we've homeschooled both our kids, and our homeschool journey comes to an end in about 5 or 6 weeks.
Oh wow!
Because my youngest is doing exams now and will start sixth form, which is kind of 16 to 18. I don't know how kind of what that relates to in the States, but
it'd be like high school.
We have exams at 16 and we have exams at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So my youngest is doing her exams at 16, and homeschool will finish then, and she's got a place at a sixth form, and so we know she's already going off to do that. And we've on the rear of our house we have a conservatory, which has pretty much been. I mean, it is full of junk as well, but it's there's a huge amount of homeschool stuff in there. We've got kind of cube shelves just full of there's English language books, English literature books, history books, languages, science, maths. There's just every single one's got that, and that will be going. There's a few books I want to keep. There's a few sort of, and I'm sure there's a few books that they will want to keep as well, and my wife will want to keep. But essentially, that will go. And we've already discussed a little bit, but I'm kind of hoping to turn that space into a craft room.
Oh yeah.
So I'll have more space to do stuff. So for example, at the moment, if I want to do some bookbinding, I use the dining table which I'm sitting at. That gets used. So if I've got me, we want to have food. Right, okay. It's not one of those meals that we can have as a TV dinner. So okay, right, I'll put everything away, got to do everything back out again. But hopefully, I'll be able to have that space as a kind of I can leave a project out, and I think it's going to be good. I've got some ideas.
Yeah,
and, so I'm
that's a great opportunity. Yeah.
So have you got? I mean, with your building the workshop, have you got? I mean, there's two of you, and you're going to be sharing this workshop, and obviously you've got specific hobbies each.
Yeah.
Is there going to be an element of sharing as well? Are you kind of sort of saying, right, that's my side, and I'm going to have benches that are set at this height, and set at that height?
That's the one thing we have not completely come to our decision on as to what the height is, because Marvin's about 6'1", 6'2", and I'm about 5'5", and so it's a noticeable difference whenever we're working on things. And like I said, my house that I lived in before, I had a full workshop. And then Marvin had space for his hobbies as well too. So we are kind of combining it all together, and, we're still newlyweds. So we're getting used to sharing because, it's been a while since we've had to share that much, but so far, so good. We've kind of been able to come into a consensus of how things will be laid out. And he does more turning on the lathe, those type of projects. And he wants to get it. We both want to get into some metal work as well. So it just kind of depends on, what each of us are working on. If it's something that we've done projects together intentionally, and then we've each had projects that we've needed assistance on, which is great to have someone there to kind of give you a hand on those, larger projects. Cause I had made a corner cabinet for my brother and sister-in-law out of some old oak boards, and just it was 3 feet wide or 3 feet long on each of the wings, or, on that corner cabinet. So just the pure physical nature of holding and gluing and getting things, clamped up and everything together, because it was 6 feet tall. And, that was a tricky booger in itself. So I was glad, whenever he came, I was like, okay, when you're here this weekend, because it was, we had our separate houses at the time. Like, so when you're home this weekend, you're in at my house this weekend, I need us to do A, B, and C, because I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to break it. Especially with all the glue ups that I did on that thing, because it wasn't made out of plywood. It was made out of, 1x6s. So I had a lot of glue on that project altogether. So far, we're about, God, I lose track of the years. It's been a little over a year now, and so far so good. I've not had any cracks in it that I know of. So my glue is holding so far.
Cool.
And screws.
I was going to say, you're going to end up with his and hers anvils. Yeah, do some metal work.
Yeah, he got me. He did give me an anvil for Christmas, so it's sitting on the back deck, and we've got an area outside of the shop that we will have an overhang on, and that'll be kind of the metalwork or blacksmithing area. Whenever we kind of get to that, we at this point we need to like stop buying. As much as I hate to say that, we need to stop buying tools, just because.
Oh,
I know.
you don't
But
need that
just-
kind of negativity in your life.
I know. Everybody's just going to be leaving us right now after that comment. Just for pure space issues at the time, because we still have quite a few of the larger tools are up at in the storage unit, or in 2 storage units actually. So I'm like, okay, I need to, we need to just kind of see how long it takes us to kind of get things set up before we do any additions, unless of course that perfect opportunity comes up. Sometimes you just can't pass up those perfect opportunities, and you just have to pull the trigger, even if it might have to sit in storage for a little while.
I've got quite a few of those.
Yeah.
I'd imagine with the height difference as well, there's going to have to be considerations in workbench height, or actually it's going to need to be, I think, his and hers anvils, just for the height difference, because you don't want to
right, exactly,
one of you with a tall back, or reaching up, or not reaching up. That's too much of a
yeah, because even like the lathe that we have, I know for Marvin, he has talked about figuring out a way to lift it up higher, because like I said, he uses it more than I do, and so I definitely wouldn't have a problem with that at all. And honestly, as long as the one thing I noticed at the last house that I was at, the workbench that was built in on the sides was definitely for someone significantly taller than me. So for me to apply pressure, that's when it became an issue. For me to be able to get that leverage of applying pressure, or using a drill or whatever tool I'm using. So when I built my workbench, it was like 6 inches shorter than the one that was already built into the shop, just because I needed to be able to have just have the right angle, and to be able to kind of get things to line out.
I think that's something that a lot of people forget about in that kind of situation. Is a lot of it is it's body position. With tool handling in general, it's it's one of the first things they talk about. With like table saws and things, of getting yourself out of the way of the path of anything that happens, and same with using a drill driver or anything. It's all about adjusting you to the workpiece, rather than kind of one size fits all sort of thing.
Yeah, and I don't want to have to stand on I am not graceful at all. So
No
if
step
I had
stools, then.
no step stools, that would be a bad idea. That'd be a bad idea all around. So yeah, just kind of trying to figure out where that happy medium is. And I know there are sometimes, especially if I'm needing to set at something and look at something, closer up, it is better to have a taller work surface. So I think it might be that, one wall will be X height, and then certain benches will be a different height. And then just depending on what we're working on as to whether, which workbench or which area we're going to use, just because sometimes, I'll definitely agree that having something a little higher is better, because it's more of a visual thing rather than a brute strength kind of thing. So there's a lot of
one recently we've got it's just like an old metal school table where we've ripped the top off and put like a sacrificial top in place. But it's out back in our kind of yard. We've got like a deck area, and, but the changes in height have allowed us to put the bench essentially like up on pallets in a position where you can, like, if my wife's sort of 5'6", I'm 6'1". So if she needs to work on something, she can sort of go around to the pallet side of it, and it's the right height for her, or I can stand sort of down on the concrete slabs, and it's the right height for me then, so it's not damaging my back and things. So that's kind of how we've approached that same challenge of just being able to, instead of being up against a wall, we've got that floating out with actual platform height differences, rather than something as a movable step.
No, that does make sense. Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, it doesn't work for every sort of situation, but it's
Yeah, that'll be. I mean, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of trial and error and learning as we're going with kind of stuff like that. Even like the flow of things, because this workspace area is about twice the size of what I had before, and I felt like I had it fairly well organized. So now I'm kind of like, in my mind, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to go with a similar layout, just everything further apart, and then kind of have the same workflow. And then once we kind of get a feel for that, be like, okay, well, this is too far away or not far enough, or we need to add this area in or whatever. I want to be able to keep things mobile so that we can make an adjustment. Or the other thing I've thought of too, since it's a 2-car garage, and like I said, the house just has a 1-car garage there too, with the weather, hail or storms or whatever, I need to be able to open up the main floor space of the shop so that other vehicles can be pulled into the shop. I don't want anything permanently or to where it'll be too much of a pain to be able to move. I've got my table saw on wheels on a workbench, and so that I want to be able to move out of the way so that if all of a sudden we're in a hurry and we need to move, a vehicle, Marvin's truck or something else into that area because of weather, I want to, I want to be able to easily move things around, or just based on the location. I mean, we've talked about too, like if we're in the backyard having family gatherings or whatever, it might be that we need to have the shop open to where we can be eating a meal in there because we need that much space. If it's raining, if we're planning a big event and it's raining, well, then we need to move all the equipment to the exterior walls, and there's going to be tables and chairs in the middle in order to be able to have a 4th of July party or a birthday party or whatever out there. So we're trying to make it as multifunctional as possible.
Of course, yeah.
But yet be able to enjoy it as a shop. I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time I go out there. I don't want to have to put everything together. But I want to have the flexibility that if something else is coming up that we need the space, we can easily use it.
I think that's a really good idea, because sometimes you get a project where you kind of think, right, the flow is going to be slightly different to my normal flow of things. But actually, if I just turn this and move that one over here, then actually that improves the flow, and I can get something done much easier or much quicker or more efficient, just more efficiently.
Yeah,
I like that. I mean, I don't have the space to have anything other than fixed, really, and my benches are much higher than kind of conventional, but that suits me for what I tend to do.
Right.
And particularly, I don't like bending over when I do have to kind of do woodwork stuff, which I tend to do outside, and I kind of have to work off workmates, or we've got a huge kind of 12-foot long patio table.
Oh yeah.
So I often work on that, and when I'm kind of doing that, it's not at a height that I find comfortable. So, but needs must. But if you're dealing with 10 feet long pieces of timber, I can't do that in a workshop. It's only 6.5 feet by 6 feet. Just doesn't quite work.
Yeah,
it's the Al approach, then, isn't it? It's build the workshop around a piece of wood.
Exactly. God, that was something else.
That is kind of that is one way of doing it. Yeah, if you kind of got. I've seen a few people do that in the past where they've kind of gone, oh, I need this extra piece of equipment. I'll just build a little hut on the side because it's a compressor or my dust extraction. I'll just build those into a hut outside, and then I haven't got to have them inside.
Well, yeah, and I mean, even at my last house, I ended up kind of expanding into my shop was on the side, but then the garage kind of turned into things, and then the shed that was in the backyard that was my wood storage, because I'm kind of hoarder when it comes to the material that I use. So, I kind of expand. And so that's why I'm hoping with the shop, I won't be wanting to expand anytime soon since we're building. We're hoping to have it big enough so that it covers our needs for a long time to come.
Yeah, you're gonna fill it though. It's the classic thing, isn't it?
That's been the common response that everybody's like, it does not matter how big you make it or how big of a space you're used to using. You're going to fill it all up. And so I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. But
every flat surface will become a place to put things.
Yeah. But it's going to be fun.
Consider dome-topped workbenches at one point, just to as a see if I could realistically work on something that I couldn't leave something on.
Yeah. That's probably not a bad idea. Maybe I need that at the office because I stack a little too much around on there too.
Well, have a look at there's a few sort of local councils in the UK where they've installed benching in the kind of sort of towns that is designed for you to be able to perch on, but a vagrant cannot sleep on it.
Oh,
I mean, there's often an uproar about it, but it's like there'll be kind of bits sticking up, or this kind of sloped at an angle. So
it's on an angle, so
but you'd roll off if you tried to sleep on it. I mean, something like that, yeah.
That works too.
Or just a really, really big fan that just blows everything off. Like my sort of discussion the other week with, again, a couple of friends in the WhatsApp group is, my approach to dusting, I think, is just going to be a compressor and then a shop vac, or a compressor and a air cleaner or something just in my office, because if I've got to stop moving things around to try and get to patches to dust them and things, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't happened.
Yeah, I'm hopefully, hopefully I'll keep it under control. I'm hoping when we start moving things in, we move things in very intentionally rather than, because the garage now is just stacks on top of stacks, and there's some semblance of, I kind of know where stuff is. But I want to make sure that when we move stuff over into the new shop finished, we bring down the tools from storage as we're ready to truly install them, not just to start rolling stuff in, and I want to take things over there, kind of test the waters a little bit before we start bringing more and more in, because, there's some stuff I never really thought about, where am I going to put or hang the things that I have received from other makers, because that's important to me to have out and showing. So I'm trying to figure out, where are my walls going to be that I'm going to hang tools that I'm actually going to use, and where are the walls going to be where I'm going to hang things that I want more for display, because those are very inspirational to me. They're very encouraging to me. So I like to be able to see that kind of thing. And, it's just very important to me, as much as having tools out. I'm not a fan of drawers. When it comes to tools that I use on a regular basis, I want to be able to pull it right off the wall. I don't want to have, and I know that kind of sounds kind of pansy. I don't want to open a drawer, but
first order retrievability, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of one of Adam Savage's kind of catchphrases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting process when I get to that stage anyway.
There's a lot to be said for ergonomics and workflow and things. I think there's never a right answer, is there, either? Because especially if you do more than one project, or more than one type of workflow. If you're doing turning in leatherwork are two very, very different ways of working. Yeah.
I am looking forward to being able to actually do more than one thing at a time, more than one project at a time, since I'll have more space. So I am looking forward to that, because, my last spot, if I had something gluing up, I probably had such a disaster in the shop that I didn't want to have, or if I had something that I was finishing, I didn't want to be, cutting something else because of, the sawdust and landing on something that I'd finished. So, if I've got something that I'm putting finish on or a glue up that's going to take a while or whatever, I think I'm going to be more likely to go take it upstairs where it'll be more just storage, and it'll be more of a clean room type thing rather than down in the shop where then I can be like, okay, I've got the rest of my Saturday now. I can do something else or at least get something started.
Yeah, it's always annoying if you have to if you're painting something.
Right.
It's like, I have to paint it here because it's too windy outside and now I can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not fire up the big saw that makes lots of dust.
Yeah.
Or compressor or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually did some painting this weekend. When I moved my daughter or helped my daughter actually hired, or her business, her new job hired movers. So thankfully we didn't have to do the heavy lifting for her moving. But we went to estate auctions to get some additional pieces of furniture that she didn't have. And, my girls really encourage my making and my hobby, but they don't want to be involved in it at all, which is fine. I appreciate the fact that they're very encouraging with what I do, and they'll gladly take anything that I make for them. They'll gladly be the recipients of that. But we bought a little corner table for the living room that was already painted like a really beautiful, super deep blue. And then she also found, that was at an estate sale, and then she found at a different one, a coffee table that she was wanting, but it just had a very different look. And I told her, I said, well, we could get paint that matches the corner table, and you can leave the legs the creamy white that they already are, but the top we can paint that blue that matches. So she was game for that. And I had taken, just in case, I took my sander, I took my drill, I took my circular saw, just in case we had anything that I needed to actually tweak or make. I had my tools with me. So we took the coffee table out onto the back deck, sanded it down, painted it, and I was just so tickled with her response because she's like, oh, I absolutely love this. And she did the sanding, she did the painting, and that, that was a very proud parent moment. I know she's not going to start doing that stuff on her own, but well, that's true too. Yet. Yeah. But she knows she can, she knows that it doesn't take that much to, sand something down a little bit and put a matching coat of paint on there and a finish and boom.
And I'll bet that every time she puts a mug down on that's going to bring a smile.
Exactly. She's going to remember, the fun we had. And for me too, whenever I see it, I'm going to be like, yeah, that was that weekend that I came up and we ran all over Kansas City, at estate sales and garage sales, talking to random people about whatever they were selling and stuff. But, it was a great memory. And I think you're totally right there, Jamie, because it's going to be something that she's going to remember, and I'm going to remember. And, I think that's what makes making even more enjoyable. If it's something that has a memory or has created a memory or, or made out of something with a memory.
Absolutely. I think it anchors it more in your head, I think, as well.
Right.
Anyone can go to IKEA or something like that and buy a coffee table in the right color because it's there on the list. That one.
Yes.
Like you say, to find the story of something from someone else and then add to that story yourself, or as a family, or however you do it. I think that kind of sticks that in your mind much more than just going and buying the thing that fits.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even when she was moving, and the movers were like, she's got all of her furniture is very old, and like the metal bed frame is very old. It's probably, my parents had it in the barn because it was, how you just kind of accumulate stuff in the barn that doesn't need it. So we had, got it out and sanded it down, took some of the rust off, and, and then painted it a few years ago when she moved. And, so she had a story to tell to the movers even, that was my mom's great uncle's bed frame that was stored in my grandparents' attic, and then we needed a bed frame, and Grandma was like, "Oh yeah, there's one out in the barn," and even the dresser that she's got, there's a big crack along the top, and the movers are like, "No, do you know there's that crack's there?" She goes, "Yes, we know that crack's there, but it's stable, and we're afraid to fix it because I'm afraid to take it apart. I don't trust. It's stable and sturdy as it is, so I don't want to mess it up." But she's like, "Yeah, that was my great grandma Steinman's dresser, and nothing matches, but that's okay. It's got a connection, it's got a story, it's important to her, and that's okay if it doesn't look like something out of a magazine or whatever. You're more likely to get a smile or at least a good feeling about something that has a connection or a story rather than
each one of them's their own character in our life.
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
I love that sort of stuff.
And I think it's good to see things like that happening. Yeah, thinking about the sort of connections to things, having those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes I think we forget sometimes with old things that actually there are stories behind them, whether it's a story that we know or whether it's a story we don't. And maybe we have to make up a story because it's something we've acquired.
Yeah.
Which can be a fun thing to do. My youngest really likes vintage suitcases.
Oh yeah.
Has several of them, and particularly loves ones where they kind of you've got the old kind of the tickets would be glued to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you've got kind of where was the destination? What was the year that this happened? It's quite an adventure where you kind of sort of see things. You think that suitcase has been to Chile or
right.
Taiwan, or it just and happened 50 years ago. So it would have gone on a steamer, or it's a fascinating kind of sort of thing to get that story. It's not one of our cases. It's not a case that we know, but just having that thing, it's just cool.
Yeah.
There's a comedian in the UK called Dave Gorman. I've talked about before, and he's quite renowned for his sort of comedy specials are like very heavily thought through. Tends to be like PowerPoint driven. Very, very like sort of highbrow intellectual type humor. But because he's known for that kind of slideshow kind of thing, he was explaining the kind of the origins of that on one of his other shows. And he used to collect old slides, photography slides. And that was kind of what he used to build his show around. So he would go to like yard sales and things like that and just rifle through to find all the really interesting photos or the old slides or anything like that. So he's got like boxes and boxes of random slides from people he's never met that lived 100 years ago, and all these kind of things that he would build into these stories, and that kind of stuff. It's wonderful to see old stories getting new chapters.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Talking of new chapters, I'd like to move on to kind of the things that have been grabbing our attention. Probably going to aim for a little bit shorter tonight. As some people may have worked out, I'm not feeling well. Yeah, I think my temperature's rising again as well. I probably need to get a good night's sleep. So, and I'm sure we'll have you back on to chat further at some other time.
Absolutely.
At some point, we'll get Dina on and Austin, and then we'll get the three of you on.
So that's
that's our normal
podcast crossover.
Stop around day. Yeah,
that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
So get to the point where kind of what's grabbing our attention. So which can be anything, whether it's things we've been making or are going to make, or things we've been watching or reading. That really doesn't matter. Just but so kind of we normally go guests first. So kind of what's been grabbing your attention lately?
Well, since it's May for Makers, I've been thoroughly looking forward to Instagram on a daily basis to see folks with their prompts for the May for Makers. Yeah. And unfortunately, May has it started off kind of on a chaotic chaos with everything going on. So I kind of fell off the wagon, unfortunately, and I never was able to kind of get back on to kind of get into the habit of posting much this month. But I have so enjoyed so many folks that have just shared so much about them that I didn't know, or, those extra connections that folks have had. So that has been that, as far as catching my attention. That's probably something that's caught my attention more than most. And then if it was the one I'm going to have to shout out is Griffin Makes. Jacob is just priceless in everything he posts. And maybe not necessarily in the Made for Maker stuff. He's just been such an interesting addition and entertaining addition to the Mozzie. So if I'm gonna shout someone out, it would definitely be Jacob from Griffin.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of kind of cosplay type stuff, isn't he?
Yes.
So for anyone that's interested in kind of cosplay, it's definitely worth checking out his work. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, we had him on the podcast, and I'm not we don't watch the same shows, or, have usually I have to get an explanation of what he's making for which show, like in detail, because I don't follow a lot of that stuff. But it's just been interesting to see how many different types of materials and mediums that he's used, whether it's the 3D printer or the leather sewing machine, or just, the hand stitching or whatever he's doing. It's just been really entertaining. And he's just a great addition to the maker community.
Yeah. I actually think cosplayers and prop makers are amongst the most versatile of the makers.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I caught Ellen's.
Sorry. Virtual Crafty yesterday.
That's the one. Thank you very much. Completely forgot all the words then. But I don't know whether that was because it was cosplay after Ellen. I had to run off and go do some other stuff, but I don't know whether that was him or not. It might have been.
No, I don't think it was. But
someone else. There was someone else who was doing some cosplay stuff.
Yeah, I think it was the same guy we had last time.
But yes, for me, I've been battling with Android and PF Sense and internety rubbish this last week. My new phone finally arrived, so it's only kind of a temporary addition until the cat sort themselves out and get some new phones on the way. But it's an absolute beast of a thing called a Uliphone, and it is the chunkiest thing. It is a properly huge phone.
Crikey.
But it's got a 10,000 milliamp hour battery in it. It should last about 6 days.
Wow. That is, that's
and
a beast.
All, fully rugged.
I was going to say power bank style almost. Yeah, absolutely. So in typical fashion, not doing anything particularly simply or easily, my router and things is all, controlled by PF Sense nerd speak stuff. But trying to get new Android to talk with annoying internet has been my challenge for this weekend. Trying to get that all migrated over and working properly. So it's been very firmly stuck in my attention for this last week.
I would say so. I never enjoy that kind of stuff.
No,
I find tech frustrating often.
Weirdly enough, I've found that this week as well.
Yeah,
it's normally the thing that brings me happiness and delight, but it's been there's been lots of face palms and head desks. Getting quite annoyed. How about you, Andy? Other than becoming unwell?
Well, until the cold kicked in yesterday afternoon, I've been further. I've painted half of the outside of the new shed, and I've moved all the garden things, the garden tools, the lawnmower, shredder, etc., into it, which freed up space in the old shed, which means I've been able to move some of the stuff from the summer house into the old shed. But the stuff from the summer house is not all going to fit in the old shed, so at some point I will have to start actually kind of maybe throwing things away.
Oh,
It's like, yeah, don't have to do that, but it's gonna have to happen. But apart from that, the thing I caught my attention earlier this week, if it may even be the week before, but I only saw it this week because I spent a couple of hours the other day kind of catching up on videos. Another sort of member of the Moz group, sort of Bob from Bob Plus Wood Stuff.
Oh yes,
he put out a video. He made a piece of wall art inspired by Dune. So if you're a kind of fan of Dune, the film and the books, then definitely worth sort of checking out. But even if you're not, the amount of work that Bob's put into making that video, the editing, it's all absolutely next level, and it's really enjoyable. Even if you the process of he teaches woodwork, so it's one of those things like. There's actually a lot of really useful information in it, but it's not just boring. Here's how to do this video. It's just stand out, and it needs more views than it's had.
Absolutely, I agree completely.
Yeah, I looked yesterday. I think it was only on something like 350 views, but it deserves 350,000.
Yeah, just the special effects kind of stuff he had going on in there. I'm just like, dang. It was, like you said, next level. Absolutely next level in editing.
The overlays, the kind of just to gain information. It's a video that kind of it grabs your attention from the moment you start watching it through to the finish, and it's informative, but it's entertaining as well. So absolutely, more people need to see it. Yep,
totally agree.
So that's it, really. We're in the middle of exam season for the kids, so that's kind of puts a kibosh on just about everything else. But now I've got this cold. It's just like first head cold in over 2 years. We're getting them locked down and things.
Yeah.
It's like it's definitely a cold. Obviously my wife had it last week and we've been testing. It's
plain old throbbing
sinuses.
Never
not fun.
Pollen's been wiping me out the other day, the last week or so. So I'm very much with you on the face ache as well.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday morning I thought, I'm getting a bit hay feverish, and I took an antihistamine, but it was just like, no, it's getting worse now, not better. So didn't escape the gift of a cold from my wife. But that's it. So where can
recovery?
Hopefully. Where can people find you, Christy?
I'm Twisted Twine Woodworking at both Instagram and YouTube. I haven't put any videos out on YouTube for about a year and a half now, but one of these days, I will get back to doing that. I've enjoyed doing that. That was something totally new. Also with everything in the last 2 years, but I really enjoyed putting them together. I can't imagine myself ever getting to the level of the ones Bob puts out. But yeah, they are a lot of fun. And but yes, Instagram and YouTube is where I can be found. And of course, the Making Our Way podcast with Dean and Austin. Oh, look, Dean's popped in on that on us there. But yes, I wrote it down because I did not want to forget mentioning the Making Our Way podcast. We load up every Tuesday morning, assuming nothing goes awry, and so.
It's well worth a listen. It's a slightly different style to most maker podcasts. So there's a sort of good bit of rapport between the three of you, and then obviously you get a guest in, and it's the fact that you're talking about a project rather than just waffling. It's a different take on things.
Right, and variety is always good.
Absolutely,
it's the spice of life, as they say.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for joining us, Christy.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, we'll have you back on at some other point when perhaps I'm not feeling quite so.
That sounds great.
All being well, we're back on next week with another good friend of ours. And
save it for the Patreon Instagram.
Yes. Yes, yeah. Patreons get an insight on a few things, so yeah, they'll start seeing more there. But we've got a guest lined up for next week, and I think we're hopefully doing a pre-record next week as well, which will be an interesting one. All being well, we're still waiting on confirmation.
Yeah, we've got a few pre-records coming up, so we can get some in the bank ready for various occasions somewhere.
Not available on Sundays.
Yeah,
it's good to have.
All right.
Thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right, bye, folks, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.